Si quieres, puedes poner tu...
Mándaselo a Betty para que ella lo vea. Mando.
Put your hands up, put your hands up. All the ladies in the house, put your hands up. If it's your birthday, let me see your hands up. If you're spending money, let me see your hands up. Get your freak on, get your freak on, get your freak on, get your freak on. And put your hands up if you get your freak on. Yo, I live life good and I don't live in the hood. Me and Jacques this fam, making sure you understood. Party every day with the best band out. Buy cash, not credit, and no ask for no handouts. Checking out these pretty Haitian girls that stand out.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to invite interpretation to give their instructions.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon. We will first provide these instructions in Spanish, then in English, and then in Haitian Creole. Primero vamos a dar estas instrucciones en español y después en inglés. Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Heidi y estoy aquí con mis colegas Patricia, Aline y Debbie con Marp Language Services. Hoy estaremos proveyendo interpretación en español, inglés y criollo haitiano para asegurarnos de que podamos participar en este espacio en el idioma que prefiramos. Entonces, siéntanse libres de participar en español cuando deseen. Si desean escuchar y participar hoy en español, les pedimos que por favor activen la función de interpretación de Zoom. Las instrucciones son las siguientes y las vamos a pegar en el chat también. Para activar la interpretación de Zoom, por favor haga clic en el globo que dice interpretación abajo a la derecha de su pantalla y elija el idioma en el que desea participar. Si está conectado a Zoom con su teléfono, por favor...
No me ponga buscando toda de...
Perdón. Por favor, toque los 3 puntos en la esquina inferior a la derecha donde dice más. Toque interpretación de idiomas, elija su idioma de preferencia y luego toque finalizado arriba a la derecha. Si tiene alguna pregunta o dificultad con la interpretación, por favor déjenos saber y con gusto le ayudamos. Y les recordamos que por favor hablen a una velocidad moderada. Queremos asegurarnos de poder interpretar todo lo que vayan a compartir y no queremos dejar a nadie atrás. Gracias. Good afternoon. My name is Heidi and I am here with my colleagues Patricia, Aline, and Debbie with Marp Language Services. We are here with my colleagues today to provide interpretation in Spanish, English, and Haitian Creole to ensure that we can all participate and have access to this information in the language that we prefer. The instructions for the Zoom feature are as follows. Please click in the interpretation globe in the lower right side of your screen and choose the language in which you would like to listen. If you're connecting to Zoom through your phone, please touch the 3 dots at the bottom right corner where it says More, tap Language Interpretation, choose the language in which you would like to listen, and then touch Done on the top right corner. If you have any issues with interpretation, please let us know and we'll be happy to support you. We would like to remind you, remind all who will be speaking to please speak at a moderate pace. We want to make sure we can interpret everything you say and we don't want to leave anyone behind. Thank you. And I pass the mic to my Haitian Creole colleagues. Please go ahead.
Allô, bonsoir tout le monde. Moi, c'est Debbie. Moi, ma co-interprète, moi, yo. Aline, Heidi avec Patricia, nous allons faire une interprétation en anglais, en espagnol, avec un créole haïtien pour nous assurer nous que nous captons des informations ça yo et participer dans la réunion ça yo dans la langue que nous préférons. Konya, mwen pral expliquer nous comment pour nous activer interprétation zone là. Soit utiliser ordinateur ou après yon icône globe dans partie en bas à droite écran là. Sur son tablette ou son téléphone, cliquez sur plus et puis ou après yon menu qui gen la donne yon option qui est interprétation là. Pour côté interprétation, hein, tant pis cliquez sur icône globe là ou soit sur interprétation là. Après ça, choisis channel langue. Soit utiliser un téléphone ou son tablette, cliquez sur fini. Si pas qu'attendre d'interprète là sur channel nous demandons pour lever main ou soit écrire dans le chat là et puis n'a pas aider. Si toutefois moun ka parler en fait dans nous inviter nous pour nous parler à une vitesse qui modérée pour nous assurer nous que nous ka bien interpréter tout ça dit. Encore bienvenue et bonne participation. Thank you.
Thank you, interpretation. If there's any questions or any difficulties, please be sure to put it in the chat, so that way your concern can get addressed. Now I'm going to pass it to Sandra Dennis, Executive Director of the Miami Worker Center.
Lizzie, there it is. Thank you, Lizzie. Thank y'all so much for joining us today. My name is Sandra Dennis. I'm the Executive Director of the Miami Workers Center, and I am honored to have you all here with us this evening. A little bit about the Miami Workers Center. We are a power building organization. We work with tenants, workers, women in Miami-Dade County for the rights, respect, and resources that we all deserve. We believe that no matter where you live, where you work, what communities you come from, that we all deserve to have a living wage job, to be treated fairly at work, but also to have homes and communities that we want to stay in, that are safe, accessible, and especially affordable, right? We know that, I'm going to ask folks to go to the next slide. We also believe that all the things that we are doing, all the experiences that we are having in our communities, whether it be from high rents, whether it be for conditions issues, whether it be from being any issues that you are experiencing on the job, we know that the solution is organizing for power when we talk to our neighbors, when we talk to our coworkers, and decide that ordinary people can absolutely make a difference if we put our efforts together. And so that's what the Miami Worker Center is all about. And we're excited to have you all here to talk about what we have been seeing in our communities and how ordinary people, everyday people, working class people in Miami are stepping up to come up with the solutions that we all need. We say that in Miami, what we see around us is build, baby, build. Everywhere you go, there is cranes, there are skyscrapers, there are buildings, fancy, with all the amenities all around us. And what people have said to us is that there is not enough housing, and we actually call that a lie. We know that there is enough supply. There's just not enough supply for working class people, for the people who make up Miami, the people who work here in Miami. And what we see is that they have made housing a commodity for folks who can afford it, for folks who want to invest, but for people who work and live here, what we have experienced is that people are being pushed out in the masses. Yeah, so we just ran the numbers, looking at them again. So since 2019, right before the pandemic, there's been almost 87,000 evictions filed in Miami-Dade County. And we always want to remind people that the 87,000 number is a multiplier effect because there are many children, many multi-generational households, And so that number could often be not only doubled, but tripled of people who are being impacted, but what it means for folks to be evicted from their homes. And one of the things we'll offer at the Miami-Dade, at the Miami Workers Center is that evictions are not, evictions are violent, right? It tears you apart from communities that you've known, that know you, that allow for folks to have their kids watched over, for elderly to feel safe. It really rips apart our social fabric. And we also know that when you don't have tight social fabrics, when you don't have tight relationships in communities, it really diminishes your ability to be resilient. So I think I'm going to pass to Maria, who's going to tell you all about our campaign, No Evictions Without Representation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for giving us that context. Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Llorens, and I'm the Policy and Research Director at Miami Workers Center. Could I get the next slide? So in response to the housing crisis in Miami-Dade, we identified that having legal representation is one of the key ways to prevent an eviction and to start to shift that power imbalance between landlords and tenants. As we saw earlier, CJP found that a overwhelming majority of landlords have representation, a lawyer in the eviction process, while only 4% of tenants do. Without a lawyer, it's difficult for tenants to defend the few rights that they do have. And it really makes it so that rights that exist in the law really don't exist in practice for everyday people, unless there's a way to defend them and enforce the law against landlords who are engaging in bad practices. And so what we are trying to do with this campaign is to pass a county ordinance granting a legal right for tenants in Miami-Dade County to have some kind of legal assistance in the eviction process. And could I get the next slide? And so the first component of the legislation is assistance for all tenants in the county with that time-sensitive answer in response to the eviction filing. So once the landlord files an eviction in county court, you have 5 days to file a response with the court saying that I don't deserve to be evicted. If you fail to file an answer within that time, you can have a default judgment against you, and the landlord will win the case automatically, and the eviction will move forward. One of the things that a new development is the Florida Supreme Court putting out a standard answer form that's about 4 pages. And so that would be one way for tenants to very quickly develop, fill out, and submit their answer. The second component would be free assistance, legal assistance for folks who fall under one or more vulnerable categories. And so if I could get the next slide. Those 4 categories are income. So the tenant's annual income is at 80% or less of area median income. For an individual in Miami-Dade County, that is $63,550. And for a family of 4, it's $90,800 annually, to give you guys an idea. The second category is that a tenant occupies the dwelling, so the unit that they are renting, with at least 1 child under the age of 18. The next is that the tenant is considered disabled by the Social Security Administration and are receiving benefits. And the last category is seniors, tenants who are at least 60 years of age. And part of the reason for these categories in particular is that these are the groups that are most vulnerable to not only bad practices in evictions by landlords, but also disproportionately impacted. And the effects of an eviction have a particularly severe effect on their lives because of their a particular situation. Other parts of the legislation are that it would direct the county to find funding to continue to implement legal assistance. And so currently we have an eviction diversion program that we and the legal partners like Community Justice Project, Legal Services of Greater Miami, and others advocated to start. So it's a pilot program that is providing legal assistance to tenants who are at the income level that we've put into the ordinance, so 80% of area median income. And that program is a pilot. The funding will be ending at the end of this month. And so we're advocating to sort of formalize the program within this ordinance and have it be funded annually so that we're not kind of stuck negotiating with the county on that this program is important and that it should be funded. And then there are two more points. So there would be space in county courthouses or the nearest county building for legal services to be provided in person to tenants at least a few times a week and have really obvious, signage, something at the courthouse to tell tenants that legal help is available. And finally, there would be a renters advisory committee, which would be a committee comprised of mostly tenants to give continual feedback to the county on the eviction diversion program and the needs of low-income tenants and other vulnerable tenants in the county. And so this campaign was developed with our tenant member leaders by canvassing the community, surveying the community, phone banking in the community, and trying to get a sense of what do people really need and how would this legislation best address what is coming up with evictions in the community. We've been holding bi-weekly campaign meetings since early this year. We've done spokesperson trainings, written postcards to our commissioners, as you can see in the bottom right, educated folks about what are the components of this type of policy in order for them to contribute to what they want to see in it. And we also held our tenant assembly in July. Next slide. And so right now, we have the legislation. We have had an initial round of meetings with most of the commissioners and are following up with the commissioners that we really potentially want to sponsor this legislation. And we will need, once it's introduced, 7 votes to pass this into law. And so our aside from getting a sponsor for the legislation, we also need at least 7 commissioners to vote for it, like I said, but also to hear from you first in the community about how you want them to support this law. Next. So I'll pass it now to our member leaders, Brian and Nelly, who are very active in the campaign and can share their perspective on it. So I'll pass it to Brian first.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Brian.
Okay. I'm a member of the Miami Workers Center just recently, and the reason that I became involved is because my entire building, which is occupied mostly by elderly and disabled people, was sold by the landlord and to a developer who was going to tear down the building, which is our home, which some people have lived here for 20 and 30 years, never missed the rent any one time, and were harassed, and with no notice, only, well, verbal notice. Building has been sold. You have to move, or else we're going to throw you out and put your belongings on the sidewalk. And that's the exact quote from the landlord's representatives. Fortunately, the Miami Workers Center and the Eviction Diversion Program found us, because if not for that, there's 100% chance that we all would have gotten motion for default judgment, writ of execution, and gone. What? Excuse me. What the Miami Workers Center was able to do is extend the time period, because we had no notice. We should have gotten 30-day notice. The landlord claimed they did, but they did not. So now it's going on 7 months. And I think right now there are 3 of us still here, because the landlord either, doesn't care or doesn't understand the affordable housing situation. Because the rent here is very, very cheap. It's a rooming house. We only pay $600 a month. And when I went to the landlord to give him his rent check, the landlord said, "No, keep your money and use that to find yourself another place," which is absolutely impossible. You will never find an apartment in Miami-Dade for $600. $1,500, $2,000 is cheap, but that's where we are today. Fortunately for me, my savior was government subsidized affordable senior housing. But that's difficult too. We have seniors that own their own homes that can't pay the taxes or insurance. We have renters that we're paying $500, $800, $1,000. Then they're told by their landlord, now it's $2,500. So I was on one lady for a year and a half trying to get into this building. I found one that's brand new, but it's been a struggle for the past 6 or 7 months. I was supposed to have moved in July 1st. I was hoping it would be any day now. I went downtown, I spent all day at Government Center and Housing Office. Unfortunately, now it's 30 to 60 days where I can move in. So I honestly don't know what I'm going to do. One of our other members has an emergency hearing tomorrow. My hearing is next Tuesday. Really don't know what I'm going to do. People become unhoused because of eviction. Right now, in addition to an affordable housing crisis, there's a homeless crisis where there aren't even beds available in shelters. It has affected me, my health, mentally, physically, and emotionally. No sleep, high blood pressure, problems with my lungs, my personal doctor, specialist. Now I have to go to the doctor every 3 weeks. Now I've got medical bills that I have to fight now with my doctor, the hospital, my insurance, Medicare and Medicaid, prescription drug copays, increases in the doses of my medication, all caused by the landlord. And that's what I have to say.
Thanks so much, Brian. We're so sorry that you're experiencing that, and we really admire your leadership in the campaign. I'll pass it to Nelly now to share her experience.
Muy buenas noches a todos. Mi nombre es Nelly Medina. Soy miembro del Miami Worker Center desde hace varios años y estoy aquí esta noche para comunicarles a ustedes la importancia de unirnos para ganar el derecho a la representación legal gratuita para inquilinos más vulnerables al desalojo, como son las personas de bajos recursos, de la tercera edad, deshabilitados, familias con niños. Yo soy inquilina, retirada, y estoy padeciendo de los aumentos excesivos de la renta. Recibo un cheque que es limitado y esos aumentos continuos y sin proporción me están perjudicando, al punto que en cualquier momento no puedo cubrir la renta y terminar siendo desalojada. Y más en un inmueble donde ellos no le dan buen mantenimiento, hay animalitos, de pronto cucarachas, ratones, un poco de todo. Entonces no es justo, hay que poner más atención para que le den buen trato a los inquilinos, que no abusen de ellos. Los aumentos son continuos y estos aumentos continuos no tienen proporción con relación a lo que se está pagando. Nos están perjudicando a todos y llegará al punto que nos desalojen por no poder cubrir esta renta. Si no puedo pagar la renta, menos puedo pagar el servicio legal de un abogado, ya que su servicio no es barato. Un abogado es necesario para que nos represente, ya que va a ser nuestra mano derecha, que conoce nuestro problema y nos puede representar correctamente en la corte. Pero si no lo tenemos y estamos solas, nos hundimos solitos. Como yo, hay mucha gente que está sufriendo la misma situación. Por eso los invito para que nos unamos y podamos contar con la ayuda del abogado. Es importante tenerlo para que nos respalde en el momento de un desalojo, porque el abogado conoce las leyes y también conoce nuestros problemas. Con un abogado tengo más chance de tener éxito en la corte. Es mejor estar bien acompañado que ir sola. Para llegar a esta campaña de servicio legal gratis como ley, ha sido una lucha continua. Esto no ha sido de la noche a la mañana. Esto ha sido trabajado, yendo puerta a puerta, hablando con la gente, en llamadas por teléfono, en encuestas y muchas otras. Vamos a las iglesias, vamos a los supermercados, tratamos con la gente para comunicarles la necesidad y conocer cuáles son las de ellos. Necesitamos el apoyo, ya que los miembros apoyamos con cursos de capacitación de los derechos del inquilino y tenemos reuniones quincenales donde nos unimos para reforzar la campaña. El esfuerzo liderado por los que más nos vemos afectados. Hemos ido estudiando y refinando y a través de esos esfuerzos llegamos a esta meta, el servicio legal gratis. Son muchos los que están pasando malos momentos y están siendo desalojados y no saben cómo enfrentar esa situación. Poco a poco hemos obtenido logros, pero necesitamos más apoyo de ustedes para hacer ley el servicio legal gratis. Para los que enfrentan desalojo, de ahí la necesidad de invitarlos a todos a que vengan a Miami Worker Center para que conozcan sus derechos y se unan en la lucha con nosotros. Unidos, enfrentamos el problema y sabemos que tendremos mejores resultados que quedándonos callados y terminando en la calle. Aquí estamos con Miami Worker Center para fortalecernos, conocer nuestros derechos y no dejarnos abusar más de los propietarios. Esperamos verlos aquí y que inviten a sus vecinos, a sus familiares, a todas aquellas personas que ustedes saben que están pasando por esta situación. Les deseo una feliz noche y gracias.
Thank you so much, Nelly and Brian, for sharing your stories. And so now I'll pass it to Alana Greer from Community Justice Project, who can tell us more about the Eviction Diversion Project and its connection to the campaign.
Hey all, thank you so much for having me, and thank you all for the fight that you're in to make sure that everyone in Miami-Dade who's going through this, who meets the criteria that Maria laid out, has access to a lawyer. It's the least that people should have to have when they're going through such a violent process. So the Eviction Diversion Program was really born out of the work of Miami Worker Center and a partnership between a number of legal organizations alongside the organizers who've been leading this fight and tenant leaders who've been leading this fight to see what would it be like, how could we go about piloting such a large scale change that we need to see in our community. The project right now works by first doing something that we've never done before here in Miami-Dade County, and we've seen very few people across the country do, which is actually go into the court records and make an effort to try to reach out directly, knock on the doors of every person we can who's had an eviction filed against them. Here in Florida, that's even more important because the window to have your say in court, to get an audience with a judge, is so incredibly short. And if you're not able to file, if you're not able to get the help you need to make that filing, then there's no, after that default, there's virtually no chance of succeeding in your case. So the Miami Worker Center has been created an entire infrastructure to go door to door and take that data from the court and actually make sure folks who are facing eviction know they're facing it. We often see people who in court, it looks like they got a notice, but they've never actually been notified that they had an eviction pending against them, let alone that they had to answer in such a short period. So that's such an important intervention. Then they connect them back with our partners at Legal Services of Greater Miami, who coordinate intake of any individual who wants to partake in those services and make sure that they're eligible based on the criteria that the county and the program lays out. And then they send individuals either to their own lawyers at Legal Services or to a number of partners, including Community Justice Project, CABA, the Cuban American Bar Association, or a number of other bar association partners, including the Haitian American Bar and the Gwen Cherry Bar Association, who provide connections with their pro bono attorneys within their networks. And the goal is really to make sure folks are connected with an attorney, not just to know your rights, but so that we can provide as many individuals as possible with full representation, right? So they have a lawyer that can accompany them through that program. And what we've seen, not only are we excited to talk to you about the times where tenants fought back and won their cases, but some of the impact I think that I've seen that has been I'm most proud of our team being a part of, and is really when tenants have been able to have space to tell their stories in court, right? But felt whether or not the court ultimately vindicated them, whether they got the win that they wanted, that they had space and dignity in that process, to be able to make their case and to build with other members of my work center, other tenants, and do something to change the system that isn't working the way it needs to work for tenants here in Florida. We've seen individuals not only get a chance to say what was going on in their situation, but actually push back. We had one case recently with a landlord who had filed against a tenant and alleged all sorts of things about the fact that they hadn't paid rent. And without a lawyer, they had been doing this for years. And we've seen landlords all the time file these kind of cases, and no one ever gets a day in court, even though the tenant in this case actually said and had all the evidence available to them that they had been paying their rent. Sorry, guys, 1 second. That they had been. Okay. Sorry, I have a toddler approaching bedtime. My apologies, guys. So in that case, the landlord had alleged that the tenants hadn't paid their rent, and it just wasn't true. It was a flat out lie. And so tenants were able to fight back. They were able to get an evidentiary hearing, which rarely happens in front of judges in tenant court, because the judges are so used to rubber stamping paper that comes before them and saying the eviction is going forward. But in this case, our lawyers were able to accompany these tenants through an evidentiary hearing. They were able to be witnesses in their own defense, and they were able to prove and get a judgment saying that they had been paying rent and that this eviction needed to get thrown out. And that seems like a logical thing that should happen in any case where that's the facts, right? Any case where that's facts, that should be something you shouldn't need a lawyer for. You shouldn't. But the system is so stacked against tenants in our system that we want to make sure that folks have at their back as much support as possible to make those arguments, and to make sure that the judges in our system are hearing the real stories of tenants that for so long they've been blocked from actually experiencing. So that was something I'm really proud of our tenants for being able to, our attorneys for being able to accompany tenants through. We've also seen, like some of the members here today, when tenants have worked together, right? When buildings or mobile home parks are getting shut down, when tenants are being unlawfully removed, or they're being subject to horrible conditions that the law says landlords are not allowed to do, but the law alone is not enough to make those rights real. And so we've been able to work with tenants to fight back not only around evictions, but also around issues of displacement and conditions, to make sure that they have a day in court and that they're able to fight back against a system that is stacked against them. And just, again, so thankful for the work of my work center to tear down some of those pieces of that system and make it more equitable. And what we've seen, just kind of macro picture, is that this original pilot program we just finishing 2 years of a pilot program now, and seeing what would it look like to staff up. We've seen over 60% increases in the number of people that are actually getting served. We still need to track some more data to see what the direct causes of all these things are. But one thing we're really interested in is we've actually seen a small drop in filings while the rest of the state's numbers are still going up. And so the fact that this program exists and can try to help folks before those paperwork even gets filed and change the behavior of landlords, is something we're really interested in figuring out. Is this contributing to that? How do we strengthen that? How do we make sure less people face this system, and when they do, that they're accompanied and can go through it with dignity and protection for their families? I think that's all. I'll throw it back to you unless there's anything else I can add or any questions I can answer.
Thank you so much, Alana. You're all doing amazing work with this project as well, and a big thank you to the other legal partners as well. So before we tell you how you can get involved in the campaign, we want to ask you how this housing crisis is impacting you, how are evictions affecting, or the risk of evictions affecting you and your community. And if you work with an organization that has members, anything that's coming up for them as well. And if you could tell us your name and which part of the county you're in. Either if you want to go off mute, or throw your question or comment in the chat. Yes, Fred?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Fred Christian, disabled community activist, founder hashtag Impact. This issue has been affecting my family. My father is 78 years old, and me, I'm 54 years old. We're both disabled. We live in an assisted, we live in a senior community, not a federally funded one or a state funded one. It is tax granted in Miami Gardens. And unfortunately, because it's a public-private partnership, the landlords have gone up the rent every year, $100 a month for the past 3 years since post-pandemic in 2021. In between the lease, not during the lease. They did this. 2021, we got a letter on our door, and everybody got letters. We will be increasing your rent in the middle of the lease. Our lease is up the 28th of February next year. We got this in July. Other people got this in July. Every June and July, they hit us with a $100 increase. Plus, we have to pay $30 for a washer dryer fee too. So, you know, it's not a picnic. This is better than a lot of places. My heart goes out to Brian because he's really feeling it, and I feel bad for him, and he needs some help. But there's some people where I live that could be in Brian's shoes very quick. I could be getting $620 a month if my dad dies. I'll have nowhere to live. So this affects me personally. I want to have a place to live. I want everybody to, that's old and disabled especially. I've had friends have to leave Miami-Dade County because they could not afford to rent. So it's a real personal issue for me, and I look forward to working with you guys on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. Anyone else, either in the chat or if you want to go off mute, want to share what's going on in your community? Cynthia, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. My name is Cynthia Lohan. I'm with Florida Rising Housing Justice Campaigner. I've had the opportunity to go to all of our counties, and myself and other folks within our organization have been conducting affordability town halls. Unfortunately, this problem, as far as folks being unable to afford their rent, facing evictions, is happening across the state. So we just want to thank Miami Workers Center for leading the charge. And we're hoping to expand the work that you guys do in Broward County and hopefully across the state. So thank you guys so much.
Thanks so much, Cynthia. I don't know why I did that odd animation. Anyone else? Feel free to go off mute. Okay. If no one else wants to share, then we'll jump ahead to how you can get involved with the campaign. And so, Lizzie, do you want to talk about the link, or I can?
Yeah, sure. So if you go, I'm going to put it in the chat here. This is our campaign page. This is essentially where folks can go to take action. And so whether it is sharing a story, your housing story, what's going on in your neighborhood, on your block, to your community around housing and evictions, whether it be affordability, whether it be conditions issued, whether it be landlords who are unaccountable. Telling our stories is some of the most impactful things that we can do to advance the campaign. You can also sign on to the campaign by putting your contact information. This is our way of letting you all know updates about the campaign, what's moving, and how you all can take action with us when it is time to mobilize, when it is time to give testimony to our county commissioners, those who have the power to make this legislation happen. And at this website, you can also find out when our next campaign meeting is. And so like Nelly mentioned and Maria mentioned earlier, we've been having bi-weekly campaign meetings throughout this year. And so on that website as well is where you can find out when our next meeting is to be able to throw down. And they are open and welcome to everybody.
Thanks, Lizzie. All right, so then the last slide is the second way you can get involved in the campaign right now. So we are going to the county budget hearing, the first hearing regarding the proposed budget for Miami-Dade County. In a previous round of funding, the eviction diversion program received $2.9 million, but this year the county is cutting that down to 1 million. And so we'll be speaking out in favor of continuing the current level of funding at 2.9 million. And so if you'd like to join us and support, we'll be there on Thursday, September 5th at 5 p.m. at Government Center. We recommend that you get there before 5 in order to get a seat in the commission chambers. And if you have any questions about that, we can stay on for a bit and answer them. All right, so that's the Teach It. Thank you everyone for joining us. And so if you don't have any other questions or comments, then we hope to see you at our next campaign meeting or on Thursday at the budget hearing.